Okay, we are live. Kia ora, e te whānau. We're coming to you live from Facebook. Welcome tonight to this creative panel. I'm coming to you from Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, and want to acknowledge Waikato Tainui as the mana whenua of the land where I am and Kingi Tuheitia. My name is Gemma, and I'm the Seed co-founder and CEO, and I use she, her pronouns. Tonight, I'm here with an incredible group of creators, and I'm fizzing. I'm here with Essie Ray, Ivana Ture, Mariana Garcia, and Kira Walters. We're going to be showcasing some incredible poetry and having some great conversation. You can join the conversation tonight in the comments. If there's something you'd like to ask our creatives, then please do check in the comments and we'll have a moment to be able to answer your questions. So tonight we're going to hear from each of our poets, and first up we have Essa. So I'm going to introduce each of our poets and we're going to hear a beautiful poem and kind of unpack this a little bit more as well. So thank you everyone and welcome. Essa is Ngāti Wehi Wehi, Ngāti Raukawa ki te tonga, Te Arawa, Waikato Tainui, Ngāti Pukeko, Ngāti Takatapuia, Glengarn Highgate, and is a poet from Kirikiriroa. Their first book of poetry, Ransack, BUP, was longlisted for the Ockham Awards 2020. They are the featured writer in Poetry New Zealand Yearbook 2020 with their work Haunt Hunt. They also dabble in visual arts. Their Red and Black series of paintings was hosted in the Gus Fisher Gallery as part of the Queer Algorithm exhibition in 2020. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Essa. Can you tell us a little bit about the poem you've chosen to share with us and why it's significant to you?
So the poem I'm going to share tonight is called "The Air is Thick with Solidarity," and it's a poem that was commissioned by poet Vaughan Rapatahana for a project that he was a part of called Kotahitanga, which was, I think, started as a response against racism, and then more broadly became focused on kotahitanga and how we can like bring each other together. And the poem is kind of, I don't know, an observation on how union can be used to kind of shut people out in a way, like how the government can use like the ideas of union and we're all like one people to not talk about, like racism or something like that. That's essentially it.
Thank you so much. Without further ado, then I'll hand over to you to hear "The Air is Thick with Solidarity."
I'm going to start with breathing. What I push out of me and what you push out of you and what we push out of each other. Lungs working like billow, lungs working. Sounds you could read on the ear is angry now. They pulled him up out of his brick, that bronze man with no business being here, having never set foot in the Waikato, removed due to the concern over the structural integrity of the building below. Are we to be weaved together, stitched slowly through veins, dripping out of our bodies? They are hungry for us. We are hungry for change. My friend posts on Instagram about getting Marx's capital tattooed on the back of her hand. Te waka ikinor is meaningless when used by government agencies that continue to promote divisions along lines of class and race and gender. What waka would float on such hypocrisy? I can see it in the Waikato now, taking water, bowing down to the spirits there as the metaphor drowns. How we are one can just look like under the thumb of the crown. We're all in the car, headed back from Humatao, our friend driving us through the lights of oncoming cars so bright that you can see nothing behind them, just the whir of metal strangers passing. There is just mist pressing its visual fuzz into the land. We'll feel safe in it, regardless of the speed. I read somewhere online about 3 ways of living kotahitanga today. The first, kotahi, is donating to a charity. A surfer dude representing the Red Cross showed up at my door the other day 2 years ago. He asked why I was wearing a dress. He asked for my dead name so that I could pay them $20 a month. Just don't drink as much coffee, they said. Wow, weird. Why do you want to be a woman? They said. I don't drink coffee, I said, and why don't you? I said, it leaves my bank account automatically. Phone calls scare me so much that I haven't cancelled it yet. Tuarua. Join a sports team. I tried to play cricket once, fell asleep on the field, and got hit by the hard red ball as it plummeted from the sky. What a wake up call. Tuatoru. Say hello to a stranger. I had my headphones on, but I think she said good morning. None of those options will shake the foundations of the settler colony, and I am sure that is intentional. All token gestures are designed to be inoffensive, pull the teeth out of our tikanga, just try to avoid touching the head on the way in and out. It's all connected, despite how cut off colonization would have us pretend to be. I swear you have more in common with this English poet from the 1600s than the Maori man who walks past the gym every morning at 7. His hair is as silver as the ghost you saw rising from the whenua. Black lives fighting police brutality in so-called Australia, hereby known as the continent, flattening into one thing is not unity. And the black lives fighting in the streets, making peace with the land that has been stolen from Indians all across Turtle Island. We know how to fight as well. We've had to for so long. Us versus pipelines versus housing developments, gold mines, tourist attractions, the crown and all its armies, police brutality, more mines, gentrification, all that drink, introduced species, and poverty, 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 poverty. Statues coming down the world over of old dead racists while all the living ones line their pockets. But we've got this. We've got to. A tweet that says, there are so many of us, aren't there? In our little group, we rat squat where Hamilton once was, aside for a wetness on the bricks. There is no sign he was ever here, because he wasn't. We ask two strangers to take a photo of us on an old camera. We can only look at the image once the film has been developed. After giving a speech at the Black Lives Matter Solidarity March, Akuia, so potent in her power, gripped me by the arm and held onto something that I hadn't felt yet until that moment. And when we pressed our noses together, the whole thing just slid into place. A breath shared, that mingling of carbon dioxide, oxygen, and nitrogen creates a meeting house for all the lines of our dead, past and present and future, to get to know each other and come up with a plan. Thank you.
Wow. Powerful. Thank you so much. That was so powerful. Thank you. We would so love to touch on some of your influences here. Wow, actually, it's still just really sitting with me. Wow.
Sorry.
Beautiful. Very, very powerful. Yeah, we would love to hear some of your influences, Essa. Who are the creatives who inspire you and inform poems like this?
So there's two poets from overseas that I find kind of really influential. One is a queer Scottish poet who came from Orkney, which is also where I have ancestors who go back to Orkney, which is an island north of Scotland. And they write a lot of poems about abolition in regards to prison abolition and police abolition. And a lot of, yeah, their like more political work is kind of a direct inspiration for pulling in those kinds of, I don't know, current events, I guess, into poetry, where there's a lot of kind of work that tries to deny the reality of the situation. I like reading stuff that pulls in those things. And the work of Audre Lorde, who was an African American poet who wrote a lot about similar things. But yeah, yeah, I think that's two important writers.
Two important influences there. Yeah. And we wonder about your creative practice evolving. I know you wrote a poem a day for about 2 years. Are you still doing that? What does your practice look like at the moment?
So I used to, I think something like 2015 and 2016, I wrote at least a poem a day. But it came a bit, I don't know, it became a bit of like a compulsion. It felt a bit unhealthy, and it wasn't necessarily like good things. I was writing a lot of bad things constantly. Um, but I think that's also important when you're starting out to just write as much as possible, and then you get into good habits. Um, at the moment, I kind of just have projects I'm working on, and then slowly chip away at them as often as I can. Um, yeah, I have a study which is really useful. I have like a separate space from my bedroom, which is where I used to write everything. It's just like sitting in bed or lying in bed. And so it's good to have a separate space to kind of focus energy on things. But yeah, I feel like I don't write as much, but I'm happier with the process and it feels a lot healthier.
Such a powerful reflection. Our last question for you tonight is, how would you like to see Aotearoa's poetry scene develop over the next 5 to 10 years? What does a thriving environment for the arts look like to you?
So I thought a little bit about this. I was having a conversation with a friend today about how writing isn't seen as like a job that's like worth being paid for, like in a regular kind of way. And then we're also talking about how a lot of Maori writers feel like the stuff they produce um, is like very life and death, or like because we don't see a lot of our writing in like a mainstream setting often. I have a friend who wrote a novel who feels very, I don't know, she feels like she's like let down people when if we had, a healthier kind of writing community that kind of respected or upheld the kind of work of mana whenua, I think that would be less of an issue. I think there should always be a focus on, are we honouring the treaty, TDT, when looking at publishing and when looking at kind of endorsing or sponsoring writers. So, in short, I'd like to see more in economic investment in Maori writing and poetry. Yeah.
Powerful vision. Powerful vision. Thank you so much. And before we head over to Mariana, I would like to remind everyone who's tuning in, thank you. Hi, kia ora, good evening. If you have any questions for any of our poets tonight, please pop them in the comments and we will answer them at the end of this kōrero. Thank you so much, Issa. That was so powerful. And next up, we have Mariana. So, kia ora, good evening, Mariana. Mariana actually used to volunteer with Seed. many moons ago. So it's such a privilege to be able to be in this space together tonight. And Mariana is a poet, a journalist who dabbles in photography. Her poems have found homes in Takahe, Poetry New Zealand Yearbook 2018, Whakaora, and Mayhem. Mariana's current project is Unsung Aotearoa. Check it out on Instagram. A blog celebrating the everyday kind of remarkable, which is part of being human. All of Mariana's work, visual or written, attempts to find the miracle in the moment, to encourage pausing, to look hard at what lies before us until we notice something new. Kia ora, Mariana.
Kia ora. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you share with us a little bit about the poem that you're reading for us tonight and what made you choose it for tonight?
Well, tonight's poem is called Astronauts. It's a new one, so no one's ever heard it before. So testing space, yeah, I know this is a bit, woo. So, what can I tell you about this poem? It came to be in the post-lockdown space because for me, I think lockdown was a great, it was an opportunity to, I'm framing it as an opportunity to just think about a lot of things that I hadn't thought about in a really long time, to reorient my, I guess, my ambitions, my dreams, and also to have a lot of conversations with my friends about things that we hadn't talked about before, which was really handy to discover. And it was a time of rediscovering my friends, rediscovering the people around me, and rediscovering how much we had in common. And so this poem is really about how we all dream and what I tried to put into words, what it feels like to kind of encounter the dreams in other people and to see what that spark is. I don't know quite yet if this is a finished poem, but I thought that it was important since Seed Waikato was really instrumental in igniting my dreams to share this poem in this space here and now. So yeah, there you go. That's what Astronauts is about. And yeah.
I'm so honored, Mariana. I can't wait to hear it. I'm going to pass it over to you to share with us Astronaut.
All right. Astronauts. To dream is to see shadow the way astronauts see gravity, a force to be outrun. To see craters as proof we dared stand in the paths of heavenly bodies, burning tunnels through the galaxy. To know we are made of stuff capable of catching shooting stars. Our particles are unstoppable force and immovable object, charged, explosive potential. Once upon one bright collision, we will break away, falter, skip across space until we trip on the edge of some wider giant and lose momentum. In time, we too will bleed red radiance on re-entry, crash in an alien sea, ripple our own water holes. As we tumble weightless, we will remember the light years. All the orbits we have run will ring in our bones, a foreign signal, a vibration that strengthens our voices. We will see shadows and shout, "We have won this race before." We will look back at our impact site and cry, "We have marked this universe." We will surface, open our eyes to sky, and sing, "This universe has marked us." Then we will make landfall.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. So honored to have been able to witness. That's beautiful. I had goosebumps. Thank you so much for sharing. Ah, wow. I felt it. I felt it so deeply.
I'm glad.
Um, uh, ah, ah, First question. Um, how has your poetry developed?
Oh, wow. I think it's crazy because 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have called myself a poet. I didn't really take my writing seriously in any way, shape, or form. I just knew that it was something that I liked to do when I had time, or when I was waiting for the bus, or when I was riding the bus, that kind of thing. Um, and so I think that the main things that have developed in my poetry is that I question myself less when I'm writing. I question myself more when I'm editing, um, and that I enjoy it more. Really, I suppose if I was going to sum it up, it's a bit of a growth in confidence, which has been um, spurred on by such amazing friends, by meeting people who write and love writing, by basically kind of embracing what poetry can do. And so that's been my journey with poetry. Really, that's the short story. The longer story involves too many people and too many places to name. So big thank you to everybody who's told me that I need to keep writing, because yeah, it's not possible without support of friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're actually one of my big inspirations for starting writing. So I wanted to acknowledge you for that. If you were to read this poem to yourself 5 years ago, was this the direction you thought your creative expression was going in? How has your creative path surprised you?
Oh wow. Well, I wouldn't. 5 years ago, I probably wouldn't have thought I would be on Facebook Live doing something like this with such amazing talent. Um, that would just not have. I would have been surprised. I think if I showed this to myself 5 years ago and I said, "You wrote that," I'd be like, "No, you're joking. You're taking this you're quoting somebody else." So that's been a surprise. What's been a surprise for me as well is how much I've learned, and how much poetry as a tool has helped me to, I guess, learn more about myself and about the people around me, to question the world, to question my own self, and to come up with solutions too, to look forward. Yeah.
Powerful, powerful insights. I wonder about the people and places you draw influence from. Are there other artists, experiences you have, or something else entirely?
Well, Essa is one actually. So, um, yeah. Well, look, just gotta put it out there. Yes, quotable. But I think that I just, you put out what you take in, right? I've always seen poetry as a kind of overflow. So when you fill up on the good stuff, then you're more likely to write good stuff. So I just read lots of a bit of everything. One of my current inspirations has been Raymond Antrobus. He's an English Jamaican poet, who had an amazing journey because he was deaf, and his poetry is a lot about recovering the sense of hearing and how that's influenced his way of communicating and perceiving the world. So if you want to check out his book, it's called Perseverance. It's epic stuff. I first discovered how poetry could sound in performance from Sarah Kay on YouTube. So that's also a big influence of mine. And my grandma first taught me to read. So she's always up there in my influence, and of course, like friends. Essa and I know some pretty talented people who've been around at the University of Waikato, and that just kind of, that's always, you need friends with you who also write, I think, to kind of just moan about the process of writing sometimes, together, or to share a coffee, or to hit writer's block with, it all feeds into each other. Yeah.
So cool. So cool. I'm hearing a real theme of like friends and whānau, hey? To just ride along on the journey.
Essential.
My last question for you is, how do you think we foster creativity as a habit? It's something we do every day, whether we're writing poems, taking photos, or any other creative pursuit.
Wow. Let me think. While my main thing would probably be, as a creative pursuit, I think that people need to stop comparing with other people. Because what we can do is, instead of using other people's art as inspiration, we can use it, and it becomes a barrier, because we say, I could never write that. But you're not, because that's not you, so you wouldn't. And I think that it's not good for us to have those kinds of comparisons and expectations of ourselves. It's about, I think, fostering the habit of creativity is first appreciating where you are and seeing your creativity as a unique and beautiful thing that needs to happen. It needs to happen because we need to be creative. It's not, I think that it shouldn't be an optional thing. I think that people need to see it as important for their development as human beings. And when they see that, and they see their creativity as something uniquely theirs, which only they can produce, then I think that takes out a lot of the kind of mental barriers to being creative.
Powerful. So good. So good. I love that reflection. And I think a lot of people can relate as well. So thank you so much for sharing your truth with us, Mariana. If you're tuning in on our live, thank you so much for joining us. If you have a question for any of our poets, please pop it in the comments and we will do our best to answer them at the end. And I'd now love to introduce Kita. Our last poet is Kita. Like Essa, Kita is proud Tainui descent, and he grew up in Porirua. So as he describes it, diversity is in his DNA. His various music videos and lyrical content have accumulated hundreds of thousands, millions, I think it's millions of hits on social media. And he'll be bringing a message that is sure to have you gobsmacked, encouraged, and motivated. Kia ora, Kita. We're so excited to have you here today.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Can you share a little bit about the piece you've chosen and its history?
Okay, so the poem that I've chosen was one that I had written 5 years ago. I'll just leave it there and for now, and explain a bit more about it afterwards. So the poem is entitled The Culture Challenge. It was a challenge I set on social media a couple of years ago, and it's still stuck with me today. I feel it's just as relevant now as what it was back then. Just a little side note, that this was written before Auntie Jacinda came into power. So this was during the day of Mr. John Key being in Parliament. So yeah, just a little side note for it anyway.
That's incredible. I'm not going to hold this up any further. Let's hear the culture challenge.
I'm 100% Maori. Reo runs through my veins. Aotearoa is my home and it never is going to change. Tainui is the iwi. Maniapoto's my tribe, and I'll be damned if I sit back and watch as my culture dies. My people used to be warriors, to the death they would fight, but nowadays all my people are fighting for is their rights. I'm sick of just sitting back and just watching our brothers dying. Papa Tuanuku is weeping, Ranginui is crying. Oh, we used to be a thriving nation, but somewhere along the road we lost our mana, and generation, restrained ourselves without hesitation. We gave our assets to the Pākehās who went and sold it to the Asians. And in the end, we became the suckers. The only time that we get recognition's when the All Blacks do the haka. The elders went to war and had to suffer. There was 100 years ago, and to this day, there's kids without a supper. He aha, we're ignorant for the hell of it. Minimum wage jobs, or we're living on the benefit. You know, the government ain't gonna help us one bit. Instead, they're taking from the poor and they're providing to the rich. So we have to kia kaha and stand toa as one, because only we can move a country like Maui had moved the sun. We are getting stronger. There's still a lot we must do, but I'm ready to make a stand for my culture. What about you?
So good.
Yeah. And
So
that's the gist of it.
powerful.
Short and sweet, but impactful.
Totally. And you light up. It's powerful. So powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us. It was incredible to witness.
No worries.
Tell us a little bit about the creatives who inspire you to work within this genre.
Okay, so I've always been a musician from about, say, 2011, 2012 was where my creative side for music started to come through. The first time I was actually introduced to proper poetry was, I don't know if you've seen it, but it was the Knock Knock slam poetry. It's if you type in Knock Knock slam poetry, you'll know what I'm talking about. That one was very impactful, and it actually showed me that I could also transfer my musical talent into writing poems. So I always had this sort of burning itch to want to write poems. I see poem as or poetry as a form of music, because it's an expression of yourself through words, and that's the same thing with music as well. You're expressing yourself through words and however you see fit. Fast forward to 2015, it was about 2-3 weeks after my daughter was born. We had to go back into a hospital, so we were in there for a couple of days in Wellington Hospital. I decided to take a walk around and just have a look throughout the different wards, and I could see that there was lots of children from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different families walking in and out. And for some reason, I just felt drawn to want to write something that represented my culture. So during the 4 or 5 days that I was in hospital, I decided to spark up something called the Culture Challenge. And the basis of it was to be able to write a rap, sing a song, do a poem, or anything, do it in whatever way you see fit, expressing your culture. I wanted it to be positive, because it wasn't about going out there and profanity here and profanity there, but I wanted it to be something interactive that would be able to get across to a mainstream audience. So after about 4 or 5 days in hospital, I had done some fact checks with one of my uncles, who's very good with his tikanga Maori, and he helped me make sure that everything I was saying was correct, and that if I was ever challenged in anything that I said, that I would know what I'm talking about, be able to back it up. So yeah, I made the video the night that we got to go back home, chucked it up onto Facebook, didn't really think anything of it, and then woke up the next day and there was, I think it was close to 50,000 people had watched it overnight. And it wasn't in right now that video's probably sitting close to 200,000, I think. Wow. It wasn't until about 2 months after that video came out that the hidden message request on Facebook popped up finally. And when I clicked on it, there was a long list of messages that I had from people not only based here in New Zealand, but also in Australia and even as far as Europe. I got a message from somebody in Alaska. I didn't even know they had internet there, but yeah, apparently they do. So yeah, I had just been getting messages from people all around the world, just talking about like what I had said, and just encouraging me. I mean, there were people that did challenge me as well, but I was able to, you know, hit them back with the straight facts. It wasn't to belittle or place like my culture up on a pedestal, but it was to tell you from my perspective how I see things and how, you know, how things are for some of my people anyway, because not only have I seen it firsthand, but I've also gone through it. So it was something that I felt needed to be said, and even today it's still just as relevant. You know, like for example, I think probably the most recent thing would be the Ihumātao thing that's been happening. Like even here in Ngaruawahia, there is a stack of plantations that the local that the Ngaruawahia residents are actually fighting to keep, because the government want to go and bust it down. It's the last plantation that they have here in Ngaruawahia, and the government want to go bust it down so that way they can build housing on it or whatever they want to do with it. And, you know, that's just a testament to what I talked about 5 years ago. It's still relevant now, and it was relevant way back, even before, you know, even before I was born. And it's, yeah, I just felt like it was something that could stand the test of time, because
Absolutely.
as
And
the years develop, you know, there's still things that are going to pop up. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
It's
So
risen
that's
over time.
encouraged me. And so yeah,
Powerful, powerful. And I know you've supported Creative Waikato in the past at different events, and I'm wondering what your preference is. Live events with an audience in front of you, or YouTube or an online video like this? Does it make a difference to your delivery?
My delivery stays the same, whether it's through social media or on a video or in front of a live crowd. I like to give myself 100%, and give the audience 100% as well. I feel more at home when I'm standing in front of a crowd. You know, you get those like pre-warm up butterflies, you know, right before I step up on stage. You know, I get that like gut feeling where I'm like, oh, maybe I should just turn around and just go sit down and just wait for the next act or something. And it's not until I grab that microphone and I actually start performing that all of that just goes away. I've been doing performances over the years for a lot of things actually. My first ever public performance was for a youth conference in 2012 at Auckland University, and we travelled from Porirua all the way up. We had a youth group in that, and I performed in front of like over 1,000 people live. There were people that were stopping by. That was probably my first public performance, and the song that I was doing, which I was happy with, was "Can't Get Enough" by Supergroove. And I was doing the fast Shea Fu part there. Well, I was kind of wondering whether you could help me out with the problem that would kind of make you go and scream and shout. It's a problem there to face it time and time, place and place it. Whenever coming to bring it back in here, but I happen to jump at the bass. And doing that, like that was my start into music. And so over the years, I've just been doing gigs here and there. I did a certificate in work skills for emceeing and DJing at Whitireia Polytechnic in 2015. And through there, I got to perform with the likes of like Nija Mystic, Tikitani, Shea Fu, King Kapisi, Scribe. We got to meet him, and just all these other musicians and artists. And yeah, it's just been really ever since.
What a journey! So sick, so cool to be
Yeah.
able to hear a little bit more about what that's looked like for you over the last decade. One last question. From us, where do you see your creative practice going from here? How do you plan to use it now and in the future to inform who you are and how you express yourself?
Good question. I feel like, well, first of all, I feel like I need to be diving into my music more often. I haven't been doing it as frequently as what I used to. Kind of like Issa had mentioned earlier, 2015, 2016 period for me, that was when I was so into my music and I was constantly writing, and that was just a constant thing. And it was to the point where I'd get a random idea here or there, note it down, and then I'd end up coming back to it and writing like a whole verse or something like that. And that would be my sort of creative way of working things. And then over the years, life just kind of takes over, and things happen. And so my creative side started to diminish over the years. I still retained the ability to be able to write, but frequently it hasn't been as frequent. But what I want to do with my music is just to be able to help people. I love helping youth. That's why I decided to get in contact with the Waikato Hip Hop Academy last year and be able to go in there and help the kids, because it's something that I love to do. I've always loved working with the younger generation, just to be able to show them that there's a different alternative in their life, other than resorting to things that are not gonna benefit them in the long run. I've seen a lot of that, even in my community in Porirua. There's a lot of that around with kids kind of going down the wrong path. I've also been a kid who's been in that position and tried to convince myself that maybe that might be something that like I could do, just resorting to all the bad stuff that you kind of get up to as a kid. But it never became my thing, because music was my safe haven when everything else seemed bleak and dark. And so I decided to hold on to it. So if I can encourage one kid to look at something like music or poetry, or even look at like a work skill that they might see and be like, okay, I can do that, and that's gonna stop one kid from hanging out late at night around the center, or doing those sorts of things. I can sleep peacefully.
I can hear your heart. You've got a real heart for community, real heart for service, real heart for young people. Just want to honor you for showing up tonight and sharing your truth and sharing such a beautiful poem with us and everyone who's on the live with us tonight too. So thank you so much to our three poets tonight, Essa, Mariana, Kida. If you want to get in touch with them, they're on social media, so you can search and find their profiles. And thank you so much if you've tuned in live with us. If you're on the replay, thanks so much. If you've enjoyed our Q&A tonight, we've got a workshop coming up on August 3rd, all about generosity. We know that a lot of young people are wondering how we can actually give back to community and how we can get involved with causes that matter most to us. So if you've ever wondered about how to help, or what you need to work through and think through to figure out how you can be of service to the community, then head along to the workshop. It's free. You can find all the details on our Facebook page. So thank you again to our guests, and good night.